All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Marla. I'll be facilitating today's meeting. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. And I have the land acknowledgement, which I think this might be the old one. Maybe not. My apologies if I am leaving something out. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and the people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on Indigenous land, and it will always be Indigenous land. Okay, just briefly, the format of the meeting to review. Everybody should keep themselves on mute. If you would like to be put on the list that I will be keeping for people to speak, just raise one finger and I will add you to the list. You'll have 2 minutes for each turn. Please respect the speaker, no side comments, no personal attacks or name calling. And if you have a question for the speaker once they are finished, you can raise 2 fingers to go out of order to ask a clarifying question, not to give your opinion. This would be an example, or for example, it would be, I didn't understand what you meant by such and such. Could you please clarify what you meant by, etc. These are not to further the opinions of the asker, and they do not require a long monologue, and questions that do not qualify as clarifying will not be allowed, and the person can just get on the list. All right, let's have everybody briefly introduce themselves, and I'll just go by the order that I see you all on the screen. So Louise, you can go first.
I'm Louise, been coming to Erace for over 2 decades, first in New Orleans and now in Austin.
Thank you. Phyllis.
I am Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans and I've been coming to Erace since the summer of 2008.
Amal.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Amal, and been coming to Erace since 1997.
Thank you. Teresa.
Good morning, I'm Teresa. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been coming since I think August 2022.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the reason why I selected this article was, again, I was just kind of browsing for something that was timely, and since I really enjoyed watching the Olympics this year, I was very curious. Well, not curious, I already knew why people were in such a kerfuffle about this particular boxer. So really, I just was curious what folks' thoughts would be regarding everything that sort of went down with, and I don't know if I'm going to say her name right, Iman Khalif, I think is hopefully correct. And yeah, I mean, I just was curious what folks had to say. So with that, I will go ahead and open the list for people to get on the list to share. And I will maybe just kind of gently interrupt folks because I don't have.
Do you want me to do the timing?
Sure. Thank you, Louise. That would be great. Thank you so much. Yep. Okay, Teresa.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up this article. Not only I think NBC should get a lot of awards for, I don't know if you guys watch NBC because that had Snoop Dogg and the primetime show with the recaps and everything. They did it really well. So when they had this controversy, I didn't quite get the initially that they were, you put it all together about standards of beauty or whatnot. But after reading this article, it's like, yes, they did it to the Williams sisters and, criticizing her attire and how her body looks and how Black women traditionally are, well, Black men too, compared to gorillas, and just always just this, even with like Michelle Obama and now Harris, it's always under the lens. It's not just the Olympiads. And that one, and of course I love the gymnastics, and that picture of Simone Biles and Jordan Childs bowing to Andrade, and it was like a historical moment. These three Black women are for the first time on this podium, and oh, what was it? 5 days later, Romania wants to dispute the da 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 da. And I thought, wow, we can't even have a full week of a historical moment without it being marred by something. So there is a larger, and you just kind of wonder about the rush to judgment, even about that. Oh, you're 4 seconds too late. And it's like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. But what I'm saying is it just seems like for people of color, it's always an uphill battle to prove that you deserve what you deserve. And there's like quick to judgment, quick to punishment, and not just, I mean, I know I'm going to get back on the list inevitably because there's only what, 5 of us, but that was my initial impression. It's like, yeah, we're always quick to judgment, and specifically about what your body looks like. All right, that's a good stopping point.
Great, thank you. Anybody else care to chime in? Phyllis?
Well, I didn't really watch the Olympics this year. There was just a lot of distractions for me. But I was aware of this ridiculous situation around, I think her name is Imani. I think that's how you say her first name. Around, that she made a little Italian lady cry and quit. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. Like, if this boxer who got hit felt like that was the hardest hit she ever took and it felt different than she did what she should have done for her body. I don't disparage what she did, but the aftermath of that, and maybe she said something in a way that spurred all this ridiculousness. But it's an ongoing issue that we keep seeing time and time again with Black or brown women athletes that doesn't affect, like, for instance, the genetic advantages that, say, white male athletes have, like Michael Phelps. It strikes me as, like, to be an elite athlete, you have to be a little bit
Special.
I don't want to say freak of nature, but over the top in terms of what you have going on with your body. And plus, if you're doing all that exercise, you're going to have muscles in a way that your average lady at the Safeway or the Winn-Dixie does not have. So that's my initial take.
Stunning. Anybody else? Louise and then Teresa?
Just really to reiterate what Phyllis said, and that was in the article, wasn't it? About how genetics, and Phelps had extra long arms, and basketball players are extra tall, some people are extra strong. So yeah, it's just such a moot point of arguing against that when it's like obvious. If they were average people, they wouldn't be excelling in their field. So it's just it's obviously a race thing. Um, and there's no doubt about that. And she wasn't, but didn't they clarify that she was born a female? Like there wasn't, people were saying she's trans, but it was a fact that she was female, that she is female. I mean, so the argument should stop, shouldn't it? Yeah, it seems like a whole brouhaha for nothing but a racial um, point, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Phyllis? I'm sorry, Teresa, and then Phyllis. I should probably still keep a list.
No problem.
Having trouble.
I was just wondering, I do have a question for the group, and anybody can chime in. I wasn't clear if everybody got a genetics test or if this was just discriminating against women of color, because I think one way we can somewhat equalize is if every Olympiad got a genetics test, carte blanche. It's like, okay, you don't just single out. If you want to just prove some stuff, prove it then. Everybody gets a genetics test, because I bet we'll stop that argument when white people start getting affected. Because just like you said, Olympiads are not your average person. They're gonna have something that is just like, and Phyllis, I'm so sorry you didn't watch the Olympics, because when the women's Olympic team ran their 4x4 relay, they were so far ahead that they had to do a wide shot just to show the second and third. I mean, that much of a friggin' lead. And it's like, if you weren't proud to be an American then, you never will be. Or when Katie Ledecky, again, she's a swimmer, and she was so far ahead. She was going in one direction when literally every other swimmer in the pool was going the opposite direction. She was just that far ahead. Are we questioning whether she's a woman? I mean, are we giving her genetic test? Because she is the most medaled female Olympiad. Now, Simone Biles is the most gymnast, of course, because she's the GOAT, but Katie Ledecky is actually are we checking to see if she's a woman? Because, how is she able, with her muscular self and lung capacity of a dolphin, being able to outswim all those other women? And I mean, it is just that obvious when she's going one direction and they're going the other.
I will just briefly interject. Folks have questioned Katie Ledecky's femininity. I don't know that they've ever done a test on her, but there was an Asian woman who was also a fighter who apparently came into question because of her abilities and was subsequently tested. But I don't think people have been tested across the board, to my knowledge. So, yeah. Okay, Phyllis, and then the list is open.
Well, to the accusation that Imani is trans, she's from Algeria. They have a law against people transitioning, and they certainly wouldn't send a trans athlete representing their country to the Olympics. So that was a very specious argument. I don't necessarily agree with all that, but that's the facts on the ground right now. And I don't know, I've just been wondering if maybe part of this is the concern that women will someday be able to compete against men and win. Like, I don't know, it feels like that might be part of this. And I did see, Teresa, the video of Sha'Carri Richardson beating everyone. And I'm just like, I was stunned by like how she runs and runs with her knees so high, like there's so much power in her running. It sort of like hurt my knees. I'll say, and I could never do that. But yeah, it was a beautiful thing to watch. Thanks.
Thank you. Amal, and then the list is open after Amal.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So yeah, I'm
Now we can't hear you.
because I worked on a particular case with this boxer. But I want to answer Teresa's question as it relates to genetic testing. What they're not doing genetic testing. What they're doing is test for steroids, and this is something that all athletes have to go through. And excuse me, in testing for steroids, they found that this young lady from Algeria had high testosterone levels, naturally high testosterone levels, which is not impossible. You can be female and have high testosterone levels. And so, and hers were, as they put, unusually high, whatever that means. But nevertheless, she had high testosterone levels. And in having those high testosterone levels, they assumed that there was something funny going on with her. And there was nothing wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with this young lady at all. This is a female. She's conditioned as a boxer. And this white woman just couldn't handle her. It's just that simple. If you saw the match, I don't know if any of y'all saw the match, but I did. If you saw the match, her hand speed, her just everything that a boxer is supposed to have, she had in that particular fight. So I don't necessarily I believe that if the woman that she was fighting was white and was black and made those same complaints, we wouldn't even be talking about this. But because this little white woman couldn't compete against this woman from another country that's predominantly of color, now we have a problem. Now we have to question her in terms of whether this is a female or not. A female. She just was able to handle herself in that situation. But that's what it is. It's they're testing for steroids. It's not a genetic test, it's a steroids test.
Teresa?
Okay, so Amal, thank you for clarifying that because I didn't get into the weeds of it. I just tried to enjoy the Olympics. So I didn't know how they even came about that. But what you did remind me of, one person I used to teach with, the older black male, he was an amateur tennis player. And again, I don't try to keep up too much with sports, although I love the Olympics and I watch the Super Bowl. That's about my extent. And when I was a teacher, I watched my students play. But my coworker at the time, he said every time he would win a tennis match, instead of just, coming to the net, shaking the hand, congratulating, if he played against a white man, he always had to make some excuse of why he lost. It could never be that my friend Malcolm was a better tennis player. It was always something else. And so you just reminded me of that. It's just like this Italian woman, she could not accept that, hey, this person is just better. I mean, you're boxing another Olympiad. So you're not going to get the Joe Blow, Jill Blow or whatever the equivalent is, boxer that you're used to sparring with. You're sparring with another Olympiad from another country and is just a higher level than what she's used to. But it kind of reminded me of my friend Malcolm saying, I never just get a straight congratulations from a white male player who I just beat. There's always some reason that they had to make themselves feel better that they lost. And so I was thinking of, the Olympic committee or whoever, who I really, again, going back to taking away Childs' bronze medal because her coach didn't do the objection within a minute, or she was a minute and 4 seconds over or something silly like that. But I don't even know if that controversy is still going on, if they've settled it. But yeah, there's always that, well, we got to make someone feel better about themselves. They never care about how the people of color feel. You know, there's never that, well, we got to make them feel better. That's always seen as something bad or um, something ridiculous. Her concern about our mental health is always ridiculous.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did we do the wrap? I'm kidding. Completely kidding.
Well, it's tough when we all agree
Right.
have the same.
Oh. Wait
Yay!
for it.
Perfect timing.
Would anybody else like to get on the list in the meantime? Glenn, welcome. Phyllis, and then the list is open. Oh, we can't hear you, Phyllis. Sorry.
Somehow I hit my Windows button instead of the unmute button. What was I going to say? So I just feel like it's so all of this seems to me based in, and the article alludes to this, like a Eurocentric idea of what is a woman and what is feminine looking and feminine behavior. And that's just silly because there's a spectrum in all genders of how people present, and there's certain things that in this culture people identify, oh, that's feminine, that's masculine, whereas in another time and place things that men wore would now be considered very
Right.
feminine, and like wigs and high heels and stockings and lace and those things are not universal and timeless. Those things change with culture and time, and when what is considered practical and what is considered to be sort of dressed up. I feel sorry for men sometimes that they don't really have the opportunity to just like flare up, you know, if they want to. Although some, of course, find ways to do that. But yeah, that's my input right now. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else care to get on the list? Teresa.
Yes, thank you. Okay. I have off and on read articles, and there's debates on both sides, of course, about how many sexes there are and the definition of gender, you know, saying that gender is what's between your ears and sex is what's between your legs and all of this in between. And there seems to be a spectrum. And then you have people who have, by all intents and purposes, hardcore science credentials saying, no, there's only two sexes. And it's like, well, then why are there intersex people, which can be even shown at a chromosomal level, and that there are chromosomal differences? And, you know, they tend, at least in the biology books that I read, which are now offensive now, because that was always the in the section called chromosomal disorders or, you know, genetic abnormalities. It was always described as something that was wrong, bad, an error, you know. And if you're religious, then you say, well, your religious being who you pray to makes mistakes, because this is you're calling it an error, and this person was born that way. And so you even look at the way we talk about it. And it's just like, how do you describe something or talk about it without calling it a mistake or saying that it's an error? Because these are actual human beings. What I'll never forget the time I was teaching in Tanzania, and I talked to, and just no idea, and I called it, this one disease, an African sleeping sickness. And this was the first time that a few times I can remember that my students turned on me instantly. Why is it African? And I was like, well, we can just call it sleeping sickness. And from the hence on, I never called that, African sleeping sickness. I just called it sleeping sickness. And, just that's how I learned it. And it's really offensive. But, going back to whatever this woman has, elevated testosterone, why is that considered an abnormality or strange or whatever, rather than this is something that makes her, she's good at being a boxer, okay, for a reason. She took to this sport, and one of the reasons she takes to this sport is because she is naturally good at it. So I was looking at that aspect of how we are led down a path to think that different is bad.
Right.
Thank you, Teresa. Anybody else care to get on the list? Phyllis.
Well, I just want to share a funny story. I was at Walmart at some point in my life here, and I was wearing like a sort of like a flannel top with small blue and white checks on it and jeans. And I think I had my hair pulled back, or maybe it was short then, and I had a hat on my head, like a baseball hat. I'm in the women's restroom. I'm drying my hands. A woman walks in, looks at me, and goes, "Am I in the wrong bathroom?"
Oh.
And I was like, "No." But it just made me laugh because that's how sort of, I don't know, can't find the word, but like socialized we are to have certain expectations. And I also am glad that was her reaction, instead of her going, "Why are you in the women's room?" and causing a big stink like they do. But I think there's such a spectrum in how humans express themselves in terms of gender or whatever. And there are so many differences that we can't see, that we can't assume based on our societal understanding that somebody is one thing or another. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, you put me on the list.
You can go right ahead, Glenn. Welcome.
Somebody got to mute their phone because I hear a lot of air blowing or something.
It's me because I'm doing the timer, but I'll just turn it back on when it's close to time.
All right, great. Sound good. Uh, you know, first of all, I don't like to see women boxing. In fact, I'm really don't like to see men boxing because it's a sport where you trying to beat somebody to be unconscious. And in football, they don't want to. If you get hit in the head once, they want to take you out the game because of the brain damage. And here you are getting hit in the head with the purpose of bruising the brain, hoping that you hit that brain hard enough that it will knock you out. So I never liked when I saw women getting in that kind of brutal smoke. And but this is the world we live in. Now, some women I have looked at, and I couldn't tell whether it was a male or female. I couldn't tell. I was trying to decide what is this, a male or a female? You know, because that's now in the world that we live in, you can easily come under suspect if you are hitting somebody like you a man. You got the strength of a man, and people might feel that you had some kind of sex change. You can come under suspicion. I don't see where that's uh, I don't know what happened to this lady in the Olympics, but I'm just adding that into that you can have doubt because of how someone, and it's not just black women. They had this Caucasian male was a swimmer. He had a he okay, that's a good beeper there. That's real loud. Yeah, it's convincing. All right, that's it. I'm finished.
Okay, would you like to get back on the list after Teresa?
Yeah, I can get back on this.
Okay, Teresa, and then Glenn, and then the list is open.
All right, thank you. Phyllis, thanks for sharing your story about being misgendered. That happened to me too, and I wanted to share that story. I was living in Denver at the time, and for spring break, I drove to the Grand Canyon. When I went to New Mexico, oh my God, all the men were flirting with me, just like flirt, 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 flirt. I crossed into Arizona. That's when I became a man. I mean, same look, same woman, just crossed the state lines. And according to them, I was a guy. And I thought that was hilarious because I had never been consistently, especially, I think it was the part that, here I got my hat on, and I think it was that hat. I think it was the hat that did it. Same dreadlocks, same person wearing shorts. And I always think that I'm beautiful. I mean, I'm not arrogant or whatnot, but I work out, keep myself in shape or whatnot. I would have thought wearing shorts and that outfit, but I think it was the hat really that did it. That, sir, excuse me, sir. I was like, who is this, sir? They're looking right at me. And it was just absolutely strange because living in other countries, I've never had anyone until I speak know that I'm American, because Americans aren't people of color, apparently. Maybe nowadays, I haven't lived outside the States since, I don't know, natural hair became more of a phenomenon. I mean, I've been rocking my dreadlocks for 30 years, and I'm glad the times have caught up to me because I used to walk into a place, and people kind of give me the side eye because of my hair. Now I'm so happy that other Black people, not just women, but Black people in general, more of us are wearing our hair natural. So that's wonderful. But Phyllis, since you bravely shared your misgendering experience, I want to share mine too. And nothing bad happened to it. As soon as I spoke, the woman was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But she was basically just asking me for water because for some reason people hike the Grand Canyon and feel like they don't need water for some reason. That's kind of a common phenomenon. I'm just the opposite. I had more water like I was going to war or something and I needed to carry my own water. So very much the opposite. But thank you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Glenn, you're next, and then the list is open.
Yeah, yeah, like I say, I don't like to see women getting themselves beat up, and uh, but but in this world we live in, you can get confused. I mean, I was at get me some eyeglasses at an eyeglass place, and the person who was waiting on me, uh, you know, I told her she was beautiful, and it turned out to be a dude. I didn't know it, and uh, told her that you're in the wrong business. You could be a model, you know. But I didn't realize until later. I put all my notes together when I left, and I said, "Oh, that was a guy." But you can't figure it out all the time. So uh, in this world today, they want to give freedom to a guy who is a man, but he got operation to become a woman, took took different you know, stuff to, but still in all, want to let them compete against other women. But this is really as a male. And it just was unfair how they're doing that today, how they want to let males come into a female field. So, like I said, I don't know what happened to the at the Olympics. What I heard about it, but I haven't looked into it. But yeah, people can be suspicious if you look male and you are just like this woman who was a tennis player, uh, Kadabalova, something like that. I mean, she had the body of a male, and but she was a full-fledged female, but she had a body of a male. That's it.
All right, thank you, Phyllis, and then the list is open.
Well, I just want to say again that a trans woman is a woman and a trans man is a man, and you're gonna have to deal with it. Seems like you can mute yourself, Glenn, if you're gonna grunt. The only time I really need to know what gender somebody is if it's somebody I'm considering sleeping with. That's the only really time that it would matter to me. But another funny story involving me in a bathroom. I was driving out to Kenner to a social work continuing education. It started raining while I was driving. I jumped out of the car to go into the building. I was a little bit late. I had to go to the bathroom. My glasses are wet and I can't see. And I head into a bathroom. And when I came out of the stall, I saw the urinals. And I was like, oh shit. But there was no man in the room. So I just washed my hands and I ran out. And I said hi to the people at the front desk who were at that point staring at me because they're probably like, what is happening right now? And I didn't really think about it too much again. So I kind of misgendered myself, I guess, by doing that. But it's so silly to me that people can't accept that not only do trans people have a right to be who they are in their being, that it's not just what was between their legs when they were born, that it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that for all of us. But if you're cis, it's just easier for us. And someday we're all just going to be sharing bathrooms. So, thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Amal is next, and then we have Louise, and then the list is open. And welcome, Leonetta. Amal?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just lowering my hand because I didn't want to keep it up there. So like I said, back to the Olympics and the misunderstanding of how genetics can sometimes work. Like I said, this wasn't a genetic test that they were just testing for steroids. And this young lady just so happened to have high testosterone levels. And I think that sometimes what I don't think it was necessarily just her high testosterone levels. I think they were looking at her physically because historically, Black women are not built like white women. And we saw that with Serena Williams and how her body was completely objectified because she dominated in a sport that was historically white women. And because she was not just beating them, but destroying them. Everything about her physically came into question. She got a big butt, she got big breasts, she got big legs, she got big shoulders. Everything about her that didn't fit into the European paradigm of what a woman is supposed to look like. Because once again, African women are built different from European. And you can go and look this up. There was a young lady named Sarah Bartman. I highly recommend people look into her story. Sarah Bartman, who was brought to Europe, and and they were using her as like a cage animal to because of the way she was built, her body, and she didn't look like the European women, and she was from South Africa, so she had. Well, just look into Sarah Bartman and it'll explain itself. And so Serena Williams was that in sports. And so these non-European women, non European descendant women, um, who don't fit into the European narrative of what a woman should look like, their bodies get objectified and they're not seen as women.
All right, thank you, Amal. Next we have Louise, and then the list is open after that.
I don't have much to say, but that what does it matter anyway if people want to be identified as whatever? And I know we're talking about sports, so to Glenn's comment about men competing in women's sports, men who have transitioned. The point about them transitioning is that they take loads of hormones and their testosterone levels are lower. They're, they've gone through a lot of things to make them more womanly and less manly. So, it's not a man competing in a woman's sport. It's not as simple as that. So there is that. And as far as using restrooms, yeah, I mean, I certainly don't mind if I'm using a restroom that there's a bloke in the next cubicle. I mean, apart from the fact that they spill and they smell a bit, I'd rather have just a woman's one, but it's not going to freak me out or make me, I think people get too bothered about a lot of stuff that really they should just let go, and it's not a problem, and it's not their business as well, as far as what people want to do with their bodies. If they're happy and it makes them happy and fulfilled, then that should be enough. That's it.
Thank you, Teresa, and then the list is open.
Yes. Now, this was before my time, but I have heard that once upon a time, female students could not play basketball because their bodies were too weak. And it's funny because you think about the WNBA and it's like whatever. And it's like, but historically, I don't have a problem with the statement that in general, women are less physically strong than the average man. And there's differences, blah, 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 blah. But it was really overstated how weak our bodies are. And now we are really seeing more and more. I just think historically people are not used to seeing a well-conditioned female body to the point of it used to be that they didn't even have sports for girls that were as physically demanding as sports for boys, i.e. girls had to play tetherball, whereas boys could play basketball. And I never even saw tetherball, not that I can recollect, except for when I was a teacher in Tanzania, and that was the most vicious friggin' game of tetherball. I think if the American girls would play tetherball the way my Tanzanian students played tetherball, we would have had girls sports sooner because they played it in the most. I mean, even my Egyptian students playing musical chairs, you're like, oh, this is a fun game. Musical friggin' chairs was a contact sport among my Egyptian students. So you look at just different cultures, and these were both male and female students. And it's just like culturally, when we say something like girls' bodies are too weak to whatever, I really think that they, again, going back to white women being put on a pedestal, and that pedestal begins when she's a little girl and we have to keep her da 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 da, whereas women of color have always been the beast of burden, the servants, the maids working in the fields or whatever. you think about how the comments are about our bodies and the expectations, because no one during the days of slavery were concerned about women or girls overworking their bodies. And now we still get the insult of, oh, you look manly, but you look humanly. You look like a human being who exercise and pushes themselves to the physical limits. Again, it has to do with both culture and bias.
All right, thank you. The list is open. Anybody have anything else to add? Amal.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm gonna lower my hand again. I always do that. So yeah, yeah, like I said, the idea, even going back to Teresa's point, like during slavery, these issues wasn't an issue because white women didn't have to do the back-breaking work that slavery required. It was on black women to do that work. But you know, the female body wasn't so delicate then, or at least not for white women. You know, the black women, they can handle it. Their bodies are built that way. You know, they have another level that the white woman body doesn't have. You know, so these objectifications were there even at that time when the backbreaking work that slavery required was the issue. You know, I don't know if anybody ever had to use a machete to chop down some sugar cane, but that ain't easy. I don't know, you know, too many people who could do that today, male or female. But just imagine using a machete to chop down some sugar cane, and you had to do a whole field of it without a lawnmower or a tractor or whatever they use today to do it. That's what it would have required. And there were women doing that type of work. So these ideas of what the female body is capable of in terms of physical activity, in particular, since we're talking about it in the context of sports here, is crazy. But once again, we're not talking about it. We're looking at it through a European lens. And I think people forget that a lot of times is that the way we view the world a lot of times is through the lens of a European paradigm. And we don't want to say that or admit that. But our standards of beauty have come from the European concept. The standards of success, the standards of what family is, all of these things have come from a European paradigm. And when somebody steps out of the European paradigm and they don't fit that mold, rather than question the European paradigm, they question that person. So Teresa, with her hair growing the way it would grow out of her scalp, is not a part of the European paradigm. And even other black people will question her about why you wear your hair like that. Well, why shouldn't I? This is the way it grows out of my head.
All right, thank you, Amal. Anybody else? Okay, I mean, I guess we can start the wrap-ups. It looks like everybody spoke, except for Lynetta. Lynetta, would you like to take 2 minutes? And then we'll just go around and do the wrap-up. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, you're on mute. But maybe she's not speaking. Okay, well, we can move on to the 1 minute and then we can return to Lynetta. I'll just go by how I see folks on my screen. Phyllis, you have a minute if you'd like it.
Yeah, thank you for this article, Marla. And I think I brought up a lot of interesting things for us all to think about and to learn more about, like what Teresa was saying, the chromosomal gender, sex situation and what that is and how it might not play into our cultural stereotypes. And I put in the chat, but in case he didn't see it, Glenn, it makes me happy that you flirted with a man.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. Teresa, you have 1 minute.
All right, thank you. I feel like I said all I needed to say because I went on like a zillion times, but I really appreciate this article. I'm really sad that the Olympics are over. And speaking of hair and dreadlocks, that was another reason I was so happy that Snoop Dogg was on the Olympics and just really representing because ever since he hit the scene, I think he's had permed hair like in the early part of his career, but I'm so happy that he has very long dreadlocks and that's being seen globally. But he's been around for a long time. And one of my favorite segments with him is when he was with Martha Stewart watching the equestrian and his take on it actually made it interesting for me because I never watched the Olympics to watch that part, but he brought that to me. So thank you, Marla, for another interesting article.
Sure, thank you. Amal, you have a minute.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I enjoyed the Olympics this year. The I'm just a fan of the Olympics, have been since 1988 with the Seoul Korea Olympics. Always watched ever since that time. And I was 10 years old at the time. So yeah, as it relates to these young ladies whose bodies was objectified and seen as masculine, because they were just good at what they did, that's wrong. And anybody who looks at it otherwise, just can't accept the fact that there's some good athletes out there who just so happen to be female and they're good at what they do. And it's a sad case of events when people can't accept the fact that they're at the elite level of their sports. It's just that simple for me. Now I'm not going to go as far as to say that I know there are men's sports and women's sports, and I don't want to see people coming into other people's sports under the banner of being I'm transitioning. No, I don't want to see that, because when that relates to boxing or MMA or things like that, no, that you're still a man in a female sports. The fact that you come under trans doesn't change that fact. You're still a man, or if you're transitioning into a woman, you're still, whatever the case may be, however you direction you feel like you're transitioning in, whatever you coming from is what you are, whether you want to accept that fact or not.
Thank you, Louise.
Well, that's your opinion, right, Amal? Um, anyway, I actually don't like boxing either, Glenn. I think it's a horrible sport for females or males. I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me who's doing it. It's just a bit of a violent, nasty sport. So I agree with that. And I don't have much more to say. That just let people be. And this poor woman was given such a tough time after an amazing win, and that's just it's shameful that had to be. So yeah, thank you, Marla.
Thanks for keeping time. Glenn, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. First of all, I am innocent from flirting with a male because I did not know he was a male. Yeah. And secondly, I don't think that I think the Olympics done two injustices when they took that bronze medal from uh, the female who had won, the American had won the Olympic, the gymnastics, uh, uh, and uh, and like I said, yeah, I don't like the female boxing. It's a dangerous sport. People have been killed with a blow to the head and have died in the ring. So it's not it's worse than football. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Lynetta, you've got 2 minutes if you would like it. If you can hear us. I don't know if she can hear us or if she's just not available. Feel free to interrupt me, Lynetta, if you'd like to. I don't really have much to add either. I think for me, it would just be great if in general folks could stop talking about other people's bodies in any sort of context. And I feel like it's in this context, especially like with athletes and so forth, it is so odd to me that so many people very quickly had something to say regarding perseverating on, is this a man, is this a woman, or like trying to decide which way when they have nothing to say about so many other things. I mean, it definitely tracks, but it's just wild to me. The other thing I just wanted to mention about bathrooms and so forth. My daughter worked over the summer at a restaurant here in town, and they have one bathroom that has both a toilet and a urinal. It's a unisex bathroom, as it were. And people consistently were freaking out about the fact that there was a urinal with a regular toilet side by side in an open room, even though it's intended obviously just for one person to use at a time. People actually questioned, you mean a man and a woman can go in here together at the same time? Anyway, it just it was funny to me. And the other thing that I wanted to just point out is about folks like myself who work on the phone a lot. It is very easy to fall into misgendering on the phone, and specifically when I'm talking with patients now, I am very careful not to use ma'am or sir or make any kind of assumptions regarding a person's name unless they refer to themselves as, I'm a woman, I'm a man, whatever. I just try very hard to be aware of not attaching gender to the person I'm speaking to. And I try to remember my colleagues of the same thing. So that's all I've got, unless anybody has anything else they want to just throw in or add. And Lynetta, would you like to have 2 minutes? Going once, going twice? Okay, I think maybe she just can't hear or she can't unmute. And either way, we were happy to have you, Lynetta. Okay.